was just looking at some data from the Youth Behavioral Assessment Survey, YRBSS, that's used by the School District of Philadelphia. It talked about the number of young people that are depressed, and even quoting a number of almost 85% of young people in North Philadelphia that really need some mental health support. And so one of the things that we have to do is make sure as a collective, as a community, as a successful public health campaign, because this is a public health issue, that we need to make sure that we're being able to give young people safe spaces to go and to be able to talk freely about some trauma and things that they're feeling.
Welcome to another edition of Key Community Leaders on the Progressive Access Zone podcast, sponsored by the Hispanic Community Council Service. I'm your guest host, Atlas X, and today we have Ms. Ericka Gaines, who is the director of
Prevention at Central Division Victim Services.
Right. Ericka, it's great to have you here today. All right. If there was anyone where, if you ever said it was a one-stop shop to get community resources, you definitely would be the definition of that.
Wow, thank you.
I've had a chance, to be talking with you now for over 6 months now, and when it comes to the wealth of information that you have, okay, as far as the flyers and information that you're putting out in the police districts, which are the 6th, the 9th, and the 22nd, I believe that you oversee. Okay, right? You definitely have been very significant, and when I was referred to you, it was like, this is the person who you need to talk to. All right, this is how you were introduced to me, as you were the person that you need to talk to. We definitely have some common interest points that we can talk on when it comes to trauma, all right, when it comes to victim services, but then also just helping communities with resources, okay?
Yes.
So if you could briefly, you just tell me a little bit about, we got a couple things to touch on, okay?
Yes.
So if you could just give me a little brief explanation of what you're doing at, prevention services, what are you doing there?
Wow. Yeah, so Central Division Victim Services services victims of crime. And it is the 22nd and now the 9th district. The 6th and the 9th actually combined.
Ah, okay.
Right, so that's just newly recently. My work as Director of Prevention is in a couple of different aspects. One, I'm the Director of the Communities That Care Coalition of North Philadelphia, and that includes different sectors of the community, but it encompasses just about all of North Philadelphia with representatives from the 37th Ward Fairhill community, Strawberry Mansion, Sharswood, Stanton, Brewery Town, and we border also Tioga and Kensington. And this coalition is working to build safe spaces for young people and making sure that we are sharing information about evidence-based models and programs, really to build protection around all of the risk factors that are going on in the communities, to really fill in those gaps. And then we have prevention programs. Our prevention program, our primary one is the PATH program, which stands for Positive Alternatives for Trauma and Healing. And this program really connects young people to activities and programs based on their interests, and then we give them foundational training regarding trauma. We also do healthy relationships, self-regulation. We also have some financial literacy in there, and really try to support our young people in that area. We also work with youth-serving organizations and schools and the community. And then lastly, we have a community listserv, and this is to make sure that we're sharing community resources in a consistent way throughout the community. Our listserv is making sure that we're addressing issues that our community is facing, such as root causes of poverty and also the social determinants of health in terms of looking at employment, looking at trades and opportunities, housing, health equity, and also the community as a group, bringing it together to empower it with community resources and support.
All right, so let's go right to safe spaces, okay? Let's talk about that for a minute. Of course, when you just think about everything that you just said, not that that's new. I mean, you could roll the clock back decades and say, well, what about these resources for certain people? Some people are more privileged than others. But in the recent years here in the city of Philadelphia and across the United States, we've had more of a spike in the gun violence and everything, the ripple effect of everything from there, all right? Carjackings, okay, that have taken place. And also these flash mobs with younger teens and individuals getting involved. Now, when you look at some of and you use the word root causes or different things happening here, you might say, well, some of these people don't have a job, all right? But then there's peer pressure. But there's also now what has happened more in the last decade, okay, I'll say is social media, all right? And these things are coming into play, which are causing some of these beefs and different things that are taking place, all right? So with that being said, because when you think about all the influences, whether it's social media, radio, TV, and the different frequencies or the different outside factors that are spiking these things, okay? I'm curious to see what is your approach to this, because it's hard to shield individuals from a lot of the things I'm just mentioning, okay? But they are a lot of the problem, and sometimes whether it's a safe place that someone can stay at or need to be extracted to maybe another, literally out of the city, you know what I mean? Because we're dealing with such a problem now that is, like I said, it's nationwide, but this has become a serious issue. And I'm just wondering, what are your thoughts on with this new component that has spiked in the last couple years?
Well, thank you for asking that question. Number one of the things that we do realize in everything that we're doing is that we're planting seeds. So the seeds that we're planting is not going to happen overnight, because these issues didn't happen overnight, even within some of the spikes that happened in a couple of years. But what we're trying to address it in a way is building protection, meaning we're making sure that our young people are aware of something that we call the social development strategy. And the social development strategy is a pillar of the communities that care model. And that means that we're making sure that we're always presenting opportunities to our youth so they can make informed choices, right, for their lives, right, alternatives. The other piece of it is that we're doing skill building to make sure that things that are available to them so they can help build skills, they can make better decisions for their lives, they'll have much more self-awareness with the skill building. We also are giving them opportunities to bond, making sure the community knows that it's their responsibility, not just parents alone, to make sure that we're responsible for our most vulnerable citizens and how we can get involved and making sure our young people are connected to positive outlets and things that they can spend their time with, right? So they can make those choices effectively. So that's an opportunity to bond. And then clear standards of behavior, meaning we're working consistently with our schools, our youth serving organization, and ways that we can support the community as a whole, whether it's parents, whether it's grandparents, and making sure that we're working with the different 12 sectors of the community. Like I said, we have our law enforcement, but we also have our nonprofits and our businesses and our families in the communities that need to really work together, right? Our health organizations along with our colleges and universities, and we're sending the same types of messages. We have to combat it. We know what the risk factors are in our community, and you listed a lot of them, right? But we as a community need to build protection. In our communities that care model, we have the belief that our community has everything within it to be successful. We have professionals, we have entities, we have services, we have resources. We need to make sure that they're connecting to the people that need it the most.
So let me ask you this question, because here's a problem, okay? Once again, you know this, but as a public or someone's listening to this, okay, right?
Right.
We know that one of the problems is that we, as the Black and brown people, there's definitely a big gap when it comes to law enforcement.
Sure.
Okay, and what's happening. Okay, we could talk about stop and frisk, things of that nature. Okay, we know there's police brutality. Okay, I mean, and we definitely are targets. That's just the bottom line. Okay,
Right.
when it comes to profiling. All right, and you may say you're trying to correct this problem. You know what I mean, as far as that's concerned. So on one hand, you have that problem. Okay, and it still exists.
Yeah.
On the other hand, when you talk to communities or you want to talk to block captains and other people, because sometimes when I'm out here, it's not easy to get individuals who are in certain neighborhoods to maybe want to be a block captain anymore, because on one hand, they're fearing for their life. Like, hey, if I go out here and try to stand up to what's going on, what type of retaliation am I going to, face perhaps, okay? But there are people where you hear success stories where we took our block back or we took the neighborhood back.
Yeah.
We're doing a community garden where they used to be selling drugs,
Right.
as an example. But this is really a key problem between the relationship between law enforcement and our youth, okay? And at the same time, you might say, well, where are the parents in some cases, okay? You know what I mean? As far as to actually mentor their own kids. Is there any relationships or dialogue or anything that you're pushing for when it comes to, for lack of better words, reform within the police department to have better liaisons there, or to say, well, hey, we know this is a problem. Can we push on this to try to resolve this, to try to lessen the gap?
Yep. And I'm glad you asked that question because when we look at all of the data, it's outlining some of the things that you're saying in terms of our juvenile justice system here that we have in the city of Philadelphia, and a lot of disparities that we know that are against Black and brown people in our community. But we have to, as a community, stay diligent and involved. So through our Communities That Care Coalition, one of the things that we do is make sure that we have involvement from our police district. I am also the 22nd Police District Advisory Council president for the 22nd Police District. And that's a reason, right? Because we have to be a part of the change that we want to see. The PDAC is a way that community members can stay involved in making sure that they're holding the police district accountable. So they have accessibility to the captain of that police district. They also work with two important officers there. One is the community relations officer. Every police district has one. And then we also have a diversionary officer that people in the community also need to be aware of. The diversionary officers are important, especially when it's dealing with at-risk youth, because instead of criminalizing some things, there are some ways that this diversion officer can get involved in making sure that the family can get the support and the resources that they need. But we have to be a part of that process. So the PDAC is one way that we're collaborating with our police district to make sure that we're involved. There are also community meetings, which are PSA meetings and town hall meetings that are hosted in every community by their police district. And we are looking to hear from people and residents in the community about issues, about concerns, and making sure that they're faced. As a coalition, we make sure that we have representation on those meetings to make sure that we can hear some concerns that people are having. And then we also, through our PDACs, encourage our community relations officers. Specifically, I'm talking about the 22nd, to engage with schools in the community as well. We see that going on, and we're trying to address it. A new initiative that's coming up specifically is called a Handle with Care grant that was issued to the 22nd Police District, and this is the only district that received this funding. It's just $1 million to really work with the School District of Philadelphia for schools within the 22nd, which is a Strawberry Mansion community, and the 22nd Police District to improve relations, working on trauma-informed approaches with youth and family in the community.
All right. So with that being said right there, a lot of times, okay, not all the time, all right, it comes down to sometimes having the opportunities.
Right.
Okay. And when it comes to that, sometimes in some of the urban neighborhoods, you might say, oh, the opportunity's not there. Now, that doesn't say that whether you come from a household that maybe just has an income of 30,000 versus a household that has an income of 100 plus, not saying that that same individual can't achieve the same heights. Some of it is their environment. Maybe are they being motivated to do something? How much do they believe in themselves? How much support are they maybe getting from family or friends, right? So I'm just curious, with regards to the organizations that you are involved with, it's one thing for job placement. That's critical, all right, to see there. And so many people may want to go to college, some maybe not getting their GED. I knew at one point Philadelphia was one of the leaders as far as people not, kids not maybe getting their GED or just graduating high school, and that was it. So when we look at that component, what type of direct feedback, if any, are you getting from teenagers themselves who are saying, well, this is what I want to do, or this is why I don't think I can do it? Some of them feel hopeless in some cases, and others who I know are like, well, hey, I'm going to go to school to be a dentist and I'm going to be a lawyer. So we have some who are on the right track, but for those who feel that life is sort of hopeless for various reasons, where are you with that? Do you have any gauge on that, or, from that?
Absolutely. So specifically with our PATH program, we're working specifically with schools in the community and youth serving organizations. So we have direct access to young people. And a lot of times you do have those feelings of hopelessness, or, college might not be for me in terms of grades, or, whatever it might be, family dynamics, affordability. So what we like to do is have our neighborhood advisors work specifically with the young people on goals, and then connect them to resources and support that they may not know. The one thing that we have in the city of Philadelphia is a lot of programs and a lot of support, and no support even extend to some individuals that have had some engagement with the criminal justice system. And looking at other cities across the U.S., we have more than most. It's just about making sure that we're connecting the dots and making sure that our young people have access to this information. For us, the most successful way to do that is working with the schools. And we're assuming that our young people are at schools, but we need to work on this as a collective, as a group. And that's why the Communities That Care Coalition is so powerful and important with that information network, to make sure that you're sharing this information across the board with everyone that you're engaged with, because we're a city of communities and we know that we need to make sure that it's getting down to the block captain level, right? So we're able to make sure that people are sharing the plethora of information that we have available. So we have a lot of resources for young people who are not, in school. One specific program that I absolutely love is called Launchpad Philadelphia. Okay. And this program takes young people when they're in the 11th grade, and they're able to work on IT and other types of industries and get paid. And then they carry them all the way through high school to the point where they'll get a job right out of high school. So, they start in the 11th grade with these young people. So they're collaborating with the school. So it's so many connections and collaborations. Our piece of it is that we're not talking to young people about what they want. We're not helping them craft their goals. We're not also looking at their gifts and talents and being able to translate into employment opportunities and ways that they can take care of themselves. Right. And so that's something that we really try to work hard on in the PATH program.
Now, with that being said, one of the programs I have that I was recently talking to you about was the panic room. Right. All right. So you also talked about trauma. Yeah. All right. And initially, the purpose of the panic room was to deal with the ripple effect of gun violence. That was the thinking or for the origination of the panic room. But it doesn't have to be always about gun violence victims. I mean, maybe you just lost your job and you're depressed, okay? Maybe a family member just died and you're feeling that. Or it could be anxiety because maybe you are scared to get up and speak in front of an audience, you know what I mean? And you want to do a presentation. But the original thinking of the panic room was to deal with the grief, anxiety, stress, and depression that can come from the gun violence and the ripple effects that are happening around the city right now, okay? Right. So this is something I know we're connecting on, you're dealing with it too. And when we look at right now, we have our youth panic room and we also have our adult panic room right now. And what are your thoughts on, because in some areas of the city, such as, say, the Kensington area, all right? You have people who have just been exposed to this for years. Yeah. It's one thing to go in and out of a certain area, whether it's West Philly, North Philly, Kensington, in and out once or twice a month, a couple times. But it's another thing to sort of be living there. And one of my good friends, Edwin, okay, from the Lighthouse, his perspective on this is that this is their normal. This is not, this is not new. This is what they see as being normal. Yeah. And that's not good. Yeah. Okay, if you feel that this environment or sort of being desensitized to seeing violence, or maybe someone laying out on the street, on a drug overdose or whatever it may be, this is a real problem. So when it comes to your therapy, like what we're doing, as I explained to you, we have our therapists online that people can access. What is your approach when it comes to referring and dealing with the trauma that is occurring in this particular city from the wave of gun violence that we've had in the last couple of years?
Right. Well, I'm glad you brought this up because, there is a segment that is normalizing it for our young people, but there's so many statistics and that will show that our young people are really suffering. And this, I was just looking at some data from the Youth Behavioral Assessment Survey, YRBSS, that's used by the School District of Philadelphia, that talked about the number of young people that are depressed, and even quoting a number of almost 85% of young people in North Philadelphia that really need some mental health support. And so one of the things that we have to do is make sure as a collective, as a community, as a successful public health campaign, because this is a public health issue, that we need to make sure that we're being able to give young people safe spaces to go and to be able to talk freely about some trauma and things that they're feeling. So the way that we're dealing with it is making sure that we're doing trauma trainings, and we're talking about toxic stress, and really talking about things like post-traumatic stress, and making sure that we have resources and support, like the panic room. And we're doing it in places where they trust. So whether we're utilizing their youth serving organizations, we're in those groups, or they're working with an individual that get to know them, that might know a little bit about their history and support, and they feel comfortable with sharing this information, and we're able to make sure that we have follow-up resources and support for them. This is an ongoing issue, with young people, because of the way that they are moving now in days, and we talked a little bit about it offline in our conversations, right? And social media also being a presence. I like the opportunity to kind of share, with you that's also another outlet where the panic room, might be able to land, to be able to, as an effort to try to reach more young people, in that realm. But as a group, as a community, we need to band together to make sure that we're putting out positive messages about mental health needs of our kids in our communities, to make sure that it's safe, and is just like treating any other part of your body. Like, it's a part of your health, your mental health. And so in terms of your physical health, you go to the doctor, right? And I treat that if my leg hurts, right? So if I'm not myself, I'm not feeling well, what do I do? And who do I talk to about it? And so, like other successful campaigns, that's what we need to do together, and be consistent.
And another key thing is nutrition, okay, right? We can't overlook that, okay? And this is for just people in general,
Right.
parents, kids, whoever, just healthy eating.
Yeah.
That is such a key thing, and getting rest.
Yes.
All right, let me ask you this though, okay? As you know, we get ready to wrap up this episode, all right? I want to ask you, because what percent, and I know you might not be able to give me an exact one, because I want to talk to about the parents for a few minutes. What percent of the kids that you are dealing with would you say are maybe homeless versus having a home to go to?
Well, I would say we need to look at the version of McKenty veto of what homelessness is, because a lot of people really don't know that. So, number one, we have a large group that have perceived homelessness, but that doesn't mean actual homelessness, right? Because even if you're living with your family member and you don't have an address of your own, you can be living with your sister, you can be living with your mother, you don't have an address of your own, you're technically homeless.
Okay.
So we need to, number one, make sure that our young people, right, and families know that, right? Because when it comes to social services and resources, that's a whole nother ball game when we're talking about services, children that are unhoused. So the floodgates in terms of community resources may open up for you, but if that's not how you identify, that's a hard number to come by. So we have to really, that's one of the things that we make sure that we share. We share information with schools, and also community organizations and youth serving organizations about McKenty veto, and what the term being unhoused or homeless or really means. Because young people don't identify if I'm staying with my aunt, you know what I mean,
Right.
or I'm staying with my uncle, and they don't understand that, hey, I might be homeless, in McKenty veto's definition of it. But we do have our supports at the School District of Philadelphia that we work with to make sure our young people that are unhoused are getting services. Some of those services mean that they can stay and have some stabilization at their certain schools if they're dealing with some housing issues. We also can jump together to make sure that their family gets some additional support and resources, to utilizing a lot of the city services, to make sure that they're placed in affordable housing. And that community resource hub is so important, because, again, that's dealing with the social determinants of health. So if people are having food insecurities, being able to connect them to resources to get food, housing supports and housing resources. Also, too, in our city, we also have some initiatives to really address youth that are just on their own, right?
Right.
And so we have referrals that we'll do, and have some great connections with organizations like Youth Valley House, and also Covenant House, and other services that can make sure that they have some housing on their own or have some residential support.
All right, so with that being said, right? Obviously, we have the group of we'll call it young adults, meaning because like nowadays, I mean not nowadays, it might have been a decade or 2 decades ago. I consider someone, just because you're 25, you're a young adult. There's still a lot of upward potential for you to do it, but you're still learning certain things. So when we talk about that group of kids or young adults, now we'll call it that, between 18 and 25, and their parents, some of them who maybe are out of school, right? Maybe didn't go to college, maybe life is good, but we have that group that are, because today, Ericka, it seems like more of our, I'm going to say individuals from, I'm going to say maybe 30 and below, are more fragile, for a lack of better words, okay? You know what I mean? And some are trying hard. You may graduate from Drexel or Penn or from Temple, and all of a sudden you can't find a job, because it's just, employers are laying off people. So now you have a dilemma. Hey, I went and did all the schooling and I still can't find a job, that it's appropriate so I can survive. And you talk about the cost of living and wages. So when it comes to parents, whether the parent is 50 or 60 years old or maybe a young parent, is there any type of programs that you have for the parents, whether it's, trying to figure out a different way to navigate to maybe make more money for themselves, or how to deal with their child directly, or just the stress that they may be involved, just every day being a parent?
Yeah, absolutely. So for specifically for our PATH program, we service the youth, young adult, and the parents. So for our young adults, that goes up to age 24, and parents are whatever ages. So with that being said, for our youth and young adults that are up to 24, we definitely want to find out what individual situation that they're in. So we do an intake with them to find out what their needs are, to then try to match services and stay connected with them. So we have 2-week check-ins with them just to make sure that they're connected to resources and support. For their parents, that information is, our door is always open. So we service walk-ins, we service the community. So any family that needs some resources and information, we do have that. We do refer out. On our corridor, we're located at 1538 Cecil B. Moore Avenue. We have an organization that's the Promise that just opened up, and that's not even a doorstep away. That's also another support on our corridor for families to connect them with services. But this is an effort that I think organizations need to do together. That's why I feel so strongly about the Communities That Care Coalition and people to participate in it, because we have more information together. We have a village, so if there's information that I need to help families, I have a whole network that I can reach out to through that coalition and others to be able to connect families to services that can help them.
And like she said, a village. Once again, this is a one-stop resource when it comes to so many connections. Ericka, as we get ready to close out this episode of Key Community Leaders, we have a new mayor, okay? He's been in office not too long, okay? What would you say when you think about past mayors? What has worked in the city, what you've seen, and what has not worked? If there were maybe 1 or 2 things, if you said, if the mayor can do this, okay, just that, what would those maybe top 2 things of you that maybe just in general, I mean, from I sometimes, look, I tell my friends sometimes, hey, Philadelphia's not the best place to have a luxury car when it comes to just driving down the street because of the amount of potholes, compared to some other cities. You know what I mean? You might say, whether it's fixing the streets or, improving certain things. What would you say maybe 1 or 2 things in general that you maybe feel can help what we're talking about if you were talking directly to the mayor?
Well, basically, if I was talking to the mayor, the biggest issues that I have is around the community supportive services and resources that are needed at the community level. So assistance for community organizations, along with schools and services for our youth and young people. Also, support for our parents. We have a city that's 45% single parents, and so we need to really look at that and understand why our young people don't have support. So definitely looking at their existing programs that they have, also to making sure that the city is adopting evidence-based models. So we are dealing with the most vulnerable citizens in our communities, and they've been marginalized for many years. We need the very best programs to come into our community, not just programs that are fly-by-night or just somebody that's funded for a period of time. We need consistency, and we need programs that are evidence-based, meaning they have shown to work in other places, and we need consistency in that area.
evidence-based that have worked in other locations, other
Exactly.
cities.
Absolutely. We need the very best for our youth and young people. We need support for our families and communities that are struggling in our communities. And I would value that conversation with the mayor.
Great. Well, Ericka, it was great having you here today. You know, we've had a chance to talk on the phone a couple of times. I wanted to get you on the key community leaders. You can see why she's a key community leader. I appreciate this. Look forward to continuing to work with you so that we can really make a difference here and an impact in the city.
Yes.
All right. With that being said, I'm Atlas X, and stay tuned for another edition of Key Community Leaders on the Progressive Access Zone Network, sponsored by the Hispanic Community Council Service. See you next time.